party people. How are we doing today? Welcome. I'm always like, camera, screen, camera, screen. Welcome to the very first episode of Cooking with Crick. I'm going to wait for a second to see if anyone actually pops on. Otherwise, this will just be a video for everyone for later. All right. Well, to start off, we're going to make our bruschetta, or a bruschetta. We're going to make that. I said without bread because it's an extra step and all that, and I just wanted to do something fairly simple this time. I am going to pull out some flatbread that I have purchased and just heat that up to put the bruschetta on when I finish. If you would like to do something like that, you are more than welcome to. But honestly, this is what the great part about this dish is. You can really put it on many, many things. It goes great on like a breaded fish, or even a breaded chicken, anything breaded really. Obviously, being of Italian origins, it goes great with that type of food. So, I'll just leave it at that for now. So, as a reminder, I'm going to start us down here. Unfortunately, I don't have a fantastic vantage point where we can see everything, so this is what we're going to get for today. So again, just to confirm, we have 2 tomatoes. I'm using Roma tomatoes. We have our salt and pepper. We have a good sharp knife. 2 cloves of garlic. And did I say the balsamic vinegar? Yes. So olive oil, balsamic vinegar, salt, pepper, tomatoes, and the garlic. So we're going to get started on this. Also, just quickly, I do have a little container here that I'm using for compost. I would highly recommend using some compost. We started a compost a few months ago, and it's been really fantastic for our garden. So, plus, you don't feel bad about throwing away extra food because it just goes into the compost and helps other plants grow. So it's pretty great. Okay, so simple start. We're going to start with the garlic. And for those of you who have not worked with garlic before, it's really, really simple. Just pop the knife on top, and you're going to give it a tap with the palm of your hand. Hear that nice little crack? That's all we need. And literally just cracks open the shell. And the great part about this is because you have your compost bucket right here, you don't even have to walk over to the trash. Just put everything right in here like this. So, I see we got 2 people watching. If anyone wants to say hello, unless you're cooking along with me and you can't touch your phone right now, feel free. Quick tip with garlic, especially with the knife. You want to just rinse the knife under some water before you start chopping, because otherwise the oil in the garlic will stick to the knife and it's really hard to get it off. But you just get a nice little layer of water, and you can already, anytime you're handling, you feel the stickiness on your fingers, right? So I'm just going to take the knife, rinse my fingers, and then even just being able to see that little tiny bit of water on there as you trim the top of the garlic. And also, just as an acknowledgement, I am not a chef. I am a cook. I do not have amazing knife skills. You don't need amazing knife skills to do this. It's just extra fun. And by the way, little bruise on the garlic, no big deal. Just chop it off. And there we go. Okay. So, other piece. By the way, I don't know if any of you have had not so great cutlery before. We actually just got these knives not too long ago, and they're pretty amazing. I actually have to watch myself. They're so sharp. So, important thing to have. So anyway, we're gonna slice our garlic into fairly thin pieces. Take your time. Nice and simple, nice and easy. And then here, now when I take my finger and I just scrape the garlic off, boom, completely comes off. So there's nothing sticky there. So nice little tip. Second piece, second clove rather. So even though I am not a chef, I want to make things as simple and easy as I can. And it saves time as well to use the back end of the knife, the butt of the knife, instead of chopping with the tip like I see a lot of people do. So you don't have to be a cutting chef expert to do that. And now you just make a pile with the pieces. And I like to pop a little finger on the front for leverage. And you're just gonna chop through. And these aren't gonna be perfect, but you want them as small as possible, because the last thing you want is a big bite of raw garlic. That's never good. Makes your tongue burn and your eyes water. Yeah, it's really good. Really tastes really good. Oh my God, it's so delicious. Okay, and especially when things get really small after you've chopped it up really fine, it's really great to have that nice and easy wipe off the knife. And this is how I do it. You got to be very careful, obviously. I just do a straight line scrape off of my finger with the edge of the knife. You don't want to angle that at all, because you don't want to slice your finger off. But anyway, so this is almost done. Now, the important thing here is obviously balance of flavors. So if you have really big garlic cloves, maybe you only want to use one. Or if you want to up the recipe and use more tomatoes, maybe the 2 is fine, maybe 3. So this is not the recipe as it should be. This is just the simple version of the recipe that I wanted to put out for this video, that you can, of your own accord, add more to if you have more guests, you want to make more for another day, all of that. So there we go. Now sometimes you might even need to re-wet the knife because it starts to get dry. And we got to cut the tomatoes now anyway. So a good wipe. Would be beneficial. So we're going to, whoop, as I throw things, put the garlic back. Going to flip the cutting board. And now we're just going to cut top into the compost, a little slice off that bottom little nub into the compost. Same thing here. I have to say too, you do not know the joy of slicing through the thick skin of a tomato until you have a really beautifully sharp knife. Oh, it's like butter. Okay, garlic stuck to me. So we're just going to chop these. You want basically about 1/2 inch size pieces. So the way I do it, I usually just go right down the center. And then depending on how thick and how wide they are, 3 or 4 slices across. And then simply into small pieces. Okay. So you want everything about, that's kind of perfect right there. About that size. Now if you want to get really crazy about it, you can go in and chop the individual pieces if they're a little too big, but kind of makes it a little more rustic if they're not all exactly the same, you know. Okay. You know, I didn't even think of it. I should have had music playing. I think I'm going to do that next time. I love cooking to some nice chill music. In fact, I might have to do that once I get all this prepped. Okay. So, one last section. I know any chefs watching me right now are like, Jesus God, watch your fingers! Be careful. Be careful. Okay, so this is really the most time-consuming part of this entire dish, is just chopping up the tomatoes. Even the garlic takes less time, but everything else is pretty straightforward. And, funny story, actually, give a rinse. My tomato hands wiped off. And a nice bowl to prep. So, I'm actually going to put the tomatoes in the bowl now, so I have space for the basil. I just do a little knife scrape off the side of the counter. Nice and easy. And then back of the knife to get all the drips so you get nothing off the floor, or nothing on the floor. There we go. Okay. So, the funny story. We have a nice, beautiful basil plant in our herb garden right out front. And I was so excited to break off a couple of beautiful basil leaves and bring them in and cut them up. And then last night, the squirrels ate almost the whole thing. So, I actually had to go out and buy a pack of basil. And by go out, I mean order one online. But hey, who's counting? It's not like we're in a pandemic or anything. I don't know. So, as I said, about 8 goes really good with this amount right here. 2 tomatoes, 2 garlic cloves, and 8 big leaves. Obviously, if they're smaller than this, you can do a few more. I don't get much bigger than this anyway, unless you're getting crazy basil plants. Like this one's a pretty huge one. So. Look at the size of that guy. Japes. Okay, so we got 1, we got 2, we got 3, we got 4, we got 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so the easiest way I have found, you just stack, they're all the same size, just however. But you put the biggest one on the bottom so it kind of envelops the rest. And then I just roll them up and then fold it in half. So you also want to be careful with basil because it's a very delicate herb. So you don't want to really chop it a lot because you can actually destroy the texture of the leaves and it takes away a little bit from the dish. So you're going to go nice and easy. As I said, with the butt of the knife, cross this way. That's probably my favorite part of cutting herbs too, is that just explosion of flavor and smell that comes off them as soon as you cut them. So I'm just going to go across this way, just like I did with the garlic, to get them a little bit smaller, but I'm not going to go crazy with chopping them all up. Too small. Just a few little runs over like that, and that should be good. So also, a little water with the herb on the knife, same deal with the garlic, helps to wipe it off the knife. With regard to the conversation topic I mentioned today, we need to actually marinate this a little bit as soon as we get the olive oil and the vinegar on there. So we're going to be talking about our topic today during the marinating time. So, any little leftovers in the compost, as I mentioned. Close up our basil. And now, I know I'm not measuring all this stuff. If you want some measurements, I'm happy to put some down in the comments, or even just on the description of the video, if that helps. And in fact, I believe I will do that at the very end. Something like this is totally fine to do to taste. You just always remember, like in any cooking or haircuts, you can always do more, you can't do less. So just make sure you don't over season or add too much of something, because you totally ruin the dish and all your efforts. So actually I want to put the basil in last because I want to mix things up a little bit, and I don't want to continue to pulverize the basil. So we're going to go garlic first. Garlic in with the tomatoes. And as I said, I'm just eyeballing this for right now. So you want a good splash of olive oil and probably just under that same amount of vinegar. You want a little less vinegar than you have olive oil. So a decent drizzle, about that. And we have our balsamic. About that. And we're going to go a few good turns. Pepper. And a few good turns of salt. Now, I want to give this a little mix. Okay. And now, I'm going to add our basil. So, around again. And then with the basil in here, you basically just want to fold it in. You don't really need to mix it too heavy because you already got everything mixed up before we put the basil in. So just nice and evenly spread around the mixture. And that is pretty much it. So we just want to let this sit for about, honestly, the longer you let it sit, the more the flavors combine, and you get a lot better taste that way. If you want to leave it in the kitchen, leave it in the fridge overnight, would be great. It's absolutely fine to eat. Even you could eat it right now if you wanted to, but you really want to give it at least a good 15 to 30 minutes to really soak up all that flavor and let the juices combine, and you're going to have a much better time with it that way. So now that we have this ready, we're going to let it sit for a few minutes while we discuss. And I'm going to get some bread ready in that process. Okay. So I'm going to pop a little bread, or flatbread, in the oven while we wait. So how's everyone doing today? Amber, good to see you. So this, we don't get over to Trader Joe's that often, but it is a favorite store. So this is just Middle Eastern flatbread that we get over there. It goes really, really great with Greek or Italian dishes, things like that. So I'm just going to pop this, warm this up a little bit, and we will have this with our bruschetta. So, what are we talking about today? We are talking about being honest with yourself. So, why is that important? Well, first off, it's the first step toward changing anything, is figuring out where you are. And if you're not being honest about where you are, then you're not going to get to where you're going, because you're taking the wrong route, right? So if you're in New York and you want to go to California, but you say or you think you're in Florida, you're going to have a very hard time getting to California, especially if you don't have a map. So you really have to know where you are. And we have this habit of sugarcoating things or making things not seem so bad because we're concerned with the judgment of others. And ironically enough, the judgment of others bleeds through into our own judgment of ourselves because we have that influence. That's how our brain works, right? So the other part of this is it's good to be honest, but it's not good to criticize, right? There's an assumption that self-deprecation and criticism, complaining, all of that stuff. Well, I'm just being honest. I'm just a big old piece of crap, and I'm never going to get anything done ever. That's not honesty. That's self-deprecation. And you have to be really, really careful about that. Because if you start there, you're not going to get to where you want to go. So I have a couple points because I'm not a mastermind either. I gotta write notes. So here we go. Okay, I like this description. Being honest with yourself is about realistically assessing what is happening compared to what you want to happen, and the difference in action needed to create that outcome. So it's an assessment. You're taking into account the truth of what is happening, acknowledging any self-judgment or criticism or assumed judgment and criticism from other people, and accepting the fact that you are where you are, knowing that in doing that, you are that much better prepared to move in a better direction, to move in a different direction, to evolve yourself. So, yeah, I love this comparison. So, oftentimes, just the nature of being human, we maintain a status quo, and then something extreme happens, and then we feel the need to act on the extreme, right? So it's I'm fine, I don't have to, I don't have to watch this particular action of mine because it's not really affecting me all that much. And then over time, that bad habit creates a result that you don't like. And then you say, oh, I don't like this result. I need to change everything right now. That can happen, as there are two ways to change anything. Repetition over time and huge potent trauma in the moment. Not necessarily negative trauma. I mean, there could be this amazingly positive experience in your life, and that triggers you to change in the moment as well. But more often than not, it's a negative thing, unfortunately. So huge trauma creates change, and repetition over time, consistency creates change. So oftentimes, we average people wait until our back is in the corner. I gotta turn off the bread. All right, there we go. We wait until, our back is to the wall before we take some action, and we're trying to make up the ground so much that we try to go full in, and then we create another problem because we don't immediately change everything, and then we fall back on the self-deprecation. See, I can't do it. It didn't work. I'm just a big old piece of crap. And it's just this cycle. So, just like you really shouldn't go shopping when you're hungry, you really shouldn't make evolution personal growth decisions when you're super hyped up emotionally, because you're gonna hit a wall in the opposite part of the room because you're gonna go full force the other way, and it's just not gonna be beneficial for you. So you have those moments, of course, we all do. Oh, I'm so frustrated, I can't. Give yourself some time to cool down. Once you can take a breath, you check back in. What actually happened? What didn't I like about that situation? What didn't I like about my reaction to what that was? This, and this. Okay. How can I change that? Or how can I be aware that happens in the future and make a decision to do something else? At least try to. Because again, it's never going to be perfect. You start and stop, you start and stop, and you get it and then you don't. That's how any new change is going to be uncomfortable and challenging, and you're not going to get it right every time. So, another important thing with this is not just the awareness of how to be honest with yourself, but what tools you can use in order to take that information and then move towards some change. So, again, starting from the honesty, waiting until you're in a more balanced state, not super emotional, just asking yourself, what did I not like about what happened? Was it my reaction? And first of all, of course, you can't change anything but your reaction to everything. You can adjust to the situation, but you can't necessarily change the situation. And even if you can, that takes time as well, and there are other influences and people and situations, but you can always drastically change yourself because you don't need anyone's permission. You don't need anyone else's tools. You don't need anyone else's effort. It all falls on you. So that's the one thing you can always control, is your reaction to anything. So, waiting until you're in a much more balanced, calm, I suppose, but just not super heightened emotionally. Breathing, huge with taking yourself down. I'll get into this another time, but I have something that I call my emotional planet. And it's basically all of that huge ball of emotion that I either suppressed or haven't really touched, or is leftover trauma from childhood and other parts of my life that I really haven't dealt with appropriately. And if you try to connect to all that at once, it can be very, very overwhelming, and you just don't want to do it. So, again, like I said, I'll get more into detail about how that manifests for me and the tools that I use to connect with my emotional planet. So, it's the problem with lives, is remembering your train of thought. So, breathing. Thank you. There you go. Thanks for the reminder. I appreciate that. That was good. Being able to take yourself from stuck in your head, repetitive, it's never going to change, I'm just a big old piece of crap, down to your emotional self. Breath, 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 breath. So, literally picturing, you close your eyes, you take some breaths. You breathe in, you picture everything coming up to where it is, all your thoughts, all the stuff that... And as you exhale, you don't push it down. You guide it down. Like a balloon, a helium balloon, right? You're not... But if you let it go, it just comes up, right? So you're adding some resistance and allowing it to go down. Now, obviously, when you're in a super heightened emotional state, sometimes you need to stay there, and that's totally fine. But it needs to be in a healthy, controlled manner. So, if you need to close the door, scream into a pillow, go somewhere where you're not going to hurt anybody and start wailing on something with a hammer. Anything to get out aggression, because aggression, anger, all of that is simply pressurized emotion. right? So the only difference between weeping and screaming is the intensity with which the emotion is leaving your body, right? So there's something else that I call the reverse prism effect. I'll touch on it in a second, but it's basically we'll do it that way. A lot of guys don't have their connection to their emotions, and because of that, they go on what society tells them is okay. And unfortunately, for the vast majority of men, the only emotion that's okay is anger. So oftentimes, after the experience and the habit of doing that for so long, men have what I like to call the reverse prism effect. Whereas in a prism, you have white light shines in, and then the colors of the rainbow come out because it's breaking down by wavelength, right? Skews the wave, and it all separates into colors. But with the reverse prism effect, it would be the opposite, except with instead of colors, it's emotion. So whatever emotion you're feeling, frustration, sadness, fear, anger, all of them, they come into your experience, they hit that, well, I can't show anything other than anger thing, prism, and it comes back out as only anger. So I, as a new father, in my experience, just started getting so much angrier all the time, and I didn't understand what it was. And I stumbled upon that idea and realized if I sat with it, the anger really broke down into many different emotions that then I could address and move through with certain tools. So I just wanted to share that. That I come across that a lot with men in general trying to deal with their emotions. It's just a default. We don't know how oftentimes to express things any other way. On top of the fact that traditionally speaking, versus see, that's more masculine, that's more feminine. It doesn't mean it's man and woman, right? Because masculine and feminine are traits. We all have them. Women have masculine and feminine traits, men have masculine and feminine traits. It's just in different concentrations depending on who you are. So really, really important to be aware of that. So being able to breathe yourself down from that intense emotional state, and then once you're calm, or at least a little more balanced emotionally, then you can assess, why did I get that upset? What was it that made that happen? And if you can't find a cause, sometimes it was just a trigger. Example, I get upset with my wife because she does something. I don't even know why I was upset with her. But once I sit and actually engage with it, feel it, analyze and assess the emotions I'm feeling, without coming up with a cause, an initial event that triggered that emotion originally, whatever my wife did triggered that emotion now. So I can just say, I'm upset about what you did, but I'm not upset with you, because I know that in any other circumstance, what she did wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But for some reason, what I associate with that action or that situation triggers an emotional experience I've had before, and I then get pissed at her. Like, why are you pissed off at me? I don't know! And then it just becomes a thing, right? So that's the part, that's what I mean about being honest with yourself. Did your emotional reaction, did that situation or happenstance merit your emotional reaction? Truly. Did it? Was it really that bad? Or are you just projecting something, or maybe even using that subconsciously as an excuse to get another frustration out that you hadn't addressed with her yet? There's that too. So the idea of being honest with yourself and knowing that it doesn't mean you're less than or not worthy or anything like that. And that's what we've been led to believe. Oh, you just, whatever name you want to insert there because you can't handle everything right out of the gate, right? Oh, you're not a man. You can't handle your shit. You're not a man. You can't just shove it down and do your work, right? Now, there are times where it's appropriate to say, okay, it's not a good situation to be this emotional. I need to curb that until I can deal with it appropriately. But that's not every time. And that's what we're told, right? So I don't want to talk in too many circles, so I'll wind it down with the idea that being honest with yourself, and this has helped me, get in a place, go somewhere where you don't have anyone looking at you, and just close your eyes and breathe. And really ask yourself, what was it that bothered me so much? And why do I think it bothered me? And more often than not, your first instinct, which tends to be your intuition, is right about why it bothered you and where it came from. Don't harp on it. Don't get stuck on that. It's just a process. Keep asking over time. Keep asking over time. And the more you can recognize and acknowledge, okay, I was at fault there. Am I the biggest piece of crap in the world because I messed up? No. But if you don't acknowledge that and then recognize it the next time it happens or a few times later and continue practicing that to realize that, oh, you know what? I need to change this because as much as I think it's someone else's fault because I keep getting pissed off, if you keep getting pissed off and it doesn't matter who it is, maybe it's you, right? That's the point. Being honest with yourself allows you to change those things. If you're constantly blaming other people or circumstances or situations, you're just going to complain the rest of your life because nothing changes, because you're not changing. So, some quick tools, as I said, the breathing up and guiding it down. You're not pushing it down, you're breathing up into your head and you're guiding the breath down into your heart. That will help you connect more with your emotional state. And that may even bring up some, like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize I was feeling that, even though it came out as anger, but this is what I'm feeling. And then you can explore that. The other one is I statements. Huge, huge, huge I statements. I feel, I thought, I didn't realize. If you start saying you, or even this little switch of an I statement, I feel that you, no, that's not an I statement. That's still a you statement. You did this, you did this, you did this. Whatever they did, it caused something in you. Their action or statement was simply a catalyst. It's not their fault. They were the trigger for it, but your reaction is yours. So, being able to recognize where you are, how to bring yourself down, how to assess it, and an awareness to address it in the future. That's the best place to start anywhere. It is the foundation of changing anything in your life from a internal personal perspective. So, I haven't set a timer, but it's certainly been long enough that we can at least check this now. So here's what we're going to do. Check it out. Look at those juices. Oh, we got to do this. Pardon my stand, making noises. Okay, so now we got some good, so you can see the juice in the bottom there. Nice little mix around, and here's what we're going to do. Gonna slice up this bread. Just like that. Got my little toast points. And then get a little more basil on there. And there we are, folks. thanks for those of you that stuck around. For any of you watching this later, I hope this was of value to you, both in meal prep as well as conversation, and hopefully in future episodes, because let's be honest, it's the very first one, so I'm not surprised people weren't talking. So we gotta build this over time. We'll get there. So thank you for tuning in to the first episode of Cooking with Crick, and I will see you next Thursday. Stay tuned for announcements of what we're going to cook and what we're going to talk about in the coming weeks. And I hope everyone has a fantastic day. Cheers. Oh, that's good. Aisha, you will take some when I'm done. How are we doing, Amber? How are we doing, Terry? Thanks for checking in, tuning in, whatever. You know what I mean. If you do prepare this, I would love to hear about it. Please either shoot me a message or comment below with a picture and anything you want to say about the process. I'd love to hear it. And if anyone has an interest or a suggestion in what you'd like to make or like to see me make, I'm happy to review those as well. I will have something prepared for next week, but as we get going, this could be pretty fun with requests and all that. So that's enough for today. I'm going to take this up to my wife so she can enjoy it too, and I will see you all soon.